Good morning, friends. Hello, hello. Oh. Hey, good morning, Linda. It's as if I just saw you. Okay, well, I kind of did just see you. How are you all? Welcome. Good morning. So good to see you all. Folks coming in. Welcome to driving to an undisclosed location. Oh, I like the sound of that. That's great. Good morning, John. Glad you're here. How is everybody this morning? I pray you are well. With my right foot pointed outward. I think Robin is referring to the title of our chat this morning about how we walk. Uh, yeah, I look a little like a duck, actually. So, yeah. In fact, yeah. I there's a story in our family that when I was born, my feet actually were like that, and I guess it's not an uncommon thing. They kind of straighten out over time or whatever. But you know, my parents would laugh at the fact because they were both skiers, and so that they kind of prophesied I'd never be much of a skier because I was constantly crossing my tips even at birth. So um, they weren't wrong. I'm an intermediate skier. I can get down a mountain and it's fun, but yeah, I don't tear it up like my brother or other people for sure. Good morning, Bonnie. Glad you're here. Fannie Faye Davis, everybody. So glad you're here. Thank you. Great to see you this morning. I hope everybody is well, finding joy in this day. I hope there is goodness in it for you. Uh, that this Thursday is the very best of days. You know, that's a little reminds me a little of the Winnie the Pooh story. Pooh, what day is it? You know, well, it's today, says Piglet, and he says, oh, that's my favorite day. Like just and this all gets to a little something about how we walk this morning. So, good morning, Donna. Glad you're here. Glad that there is goodness in your days. I hope that is so. Good morning, everybody. So glad you're here. I see one or two more people coming along, and we will get going. So I am hopeful you're having a good morning. So good morning, everybody. It is the 15th day. It is tax day. It is the 15th day of, even though it got extended this year, it is the 15th day of April on 2021, this Thursday. I am so glad that each one of you are here and that you're journeying with us today. It is a joy to me and an encouragement to see all of your digital little faces. Linda, I get to see Monty. That's always fun. Um, I hope everybody is well and good and whole this day. I want to start with this little phrase, this little again, I'm in this little throwaway line kind of thing right now, but about Bible, and there just are no throwaway lines, and so I just love this. So Paul is writing this letter to the church in Ephesus. So the church in Ephesus they are getting beat up. Like it is, they are having a hard time. These Ephesians. That Ephesus is a place of a great deal of pagan worship. It is, and so the church in Ephesus. And oh, by the way, if you ever worried about being a part of a small church, if you're like, oh, my church doesn't have, back in the day they used to have all kinds of people, and now we're just a small group, or somebody's telling you some sort of lie about, what used to be in the past and what is now, and what the bleakness of the future. Archaeologists have been working on this, on looking at the Church of Ephesus and this sort of stuff, and the all of these things that they thought were true about it are kind of falling away, and they're kind of discovering that the church in Ephesus was probably no more, at its zenith, at its height, was probably about 30 people. I mean, think about that. This letter that Paul wrote to the church in Ephesus, that has influenced billions of people in their Christian walk, in the way in which they come to know God. This simple penning of this letter to a group of no more than 30 people, beleaguered and attacked by the culture around them. In his letter of encouragement and in some ways correction to them, that has gone on to endure for millennia at this point. Well, it was just a letter to 30 people. It was just a letter to 30 people. So in this letter that we find today is these words. It's in the 5th chapter, and it's another one of these little, as I said, these throwaway lines. That he says, therefore, he's giving instruction to them. He says, therefore, be careful how you walk, not as unwise people, but as wise. Make the most of your time, because the days are evil. So then, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Make the most of your time, because the days are evil. Be careful how you walk. Now, a couple of comments about how we walk. The whole process of walking is one in which, first to me, it's just fascinating to begin with. Like, because we think, walking is the in some ways it's the most human thing we do, being a bipedal animal and walking on 2 legs and how we walk. But the constant act of walking is an act of, you put one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, and before you know it, you'll be walking across the floor. Yeah, that song, yeah. So we walk by putting one foot in front of the other, but this is the key, and losing our balance and catching it. The constant act of walking is this act of constantly losing our balance, because otherwise we wouldn't move forward. If we had our balance and we just put one foot in front of the other, I mean, you can do this and your foot sticks out there and you don't go anywhere. You have to lean into this a bit, and that the moment of leaning into it is actually the point of losing your balance. That, in fact, when you're walking, you are constantly and utterly always off balance. You're always off balance. You're never in a balanced and whole and right state. Like, you're constantly, any time we are in motion in walking, we lose our balance and fall and catch it. We lose our balance and catch it. We lose our balance and catch it. Now we're so inculcated. We're so used to this process that it doesn't even seem to bug us. It doesn't even seem to bother us. It is in fact the most natural and most beautiful things that we do is to go for a good long walk. Like how we propel ourselves through this world in our walking. But at its heart is this constant process of losing our balance and catching it, losing our balance and catching it. Well, friends, it's true of the spiritual life too. We'd like to think that this process of following God, this process of, we are a pilgrim people. We are people who, what we say is we're a people who gather together to follow this Jesus guy. That's what we're doing. It's not about creedal profession, but getting the right ideas. It's not about it's about This is the way Jesus is walking, and we're going to try and walk that way. Walk in those footsteps and walk that path up the mountain. That's our, and that we're going to do it together. That's what makes us pilgrims traveling through this world. And that process is one where we are constantly losing our balance and catching it, losing our balance and catching it, losing our balance and catching it. Now, in the spiritual world, in our spiritual life, we are constantly, I think we're a lot less comfortable with this, maybe, even though it's as hardwired into our heart and into our soul as it is into our physical bodies. We're constantly encountering a new person, encountering a new day, encountering a new way of being, encountering a new, and constantly finding ourselves a little off balance. Oh, what do I do with that? Where do I go? And then catching ourselves, falling and catching ourselves, falling and catching ourselves, falling and catching ourselves. Except in the spiritual life, we are falling and Christ catches us. We are falling and Jesus catches us. We are falling and God catches us. We are falling and the Spirit catches us. That as we walk out our falling, and it propels us up the mountain of God. Paul says, watch how you walk, because the days are evil. He was talking about the fact that this little group in Ephesus was being persecuted, that they were being hurt, and they were being laid up in persecutions. But it's also that we need to watch how we walk in this world, to be mindful of our days. It is so easy, and particularly in these days when when all of this stuff started, when 11/11 started. One of the reasons I started this and started this whole gathering of us was that we might, because all of our days lost its punctuation, is the way I talked about it. That the days very quickly started to become this one run-on sentence. We lost our weekends, we lost our Sabbath, we lost perhaps our rhythm of day of work and play. We lost our connections of face to face with people. And even though we're still in pieces of chaos of this, and that rhythm, it's a lot like walking, isn't it? That rhythm, that falling down and catching ourselves, that stepping out and falling and catching ourselves. Our stride was broken. Our punctuation and our days became run-on sentences. And so I kind of started this with this idea that we would just give us something at 11:11 to punctuate our days, and that in that we might be able to create a little more order and a little more balance, or a little more catching ourselves maybe in our off-balanceness, to prevent our stumbles of our days. Dostoevsky says this. He says that when I look back on my past and I think how much time I wasted on nothing, how much time has been lost in futilities, errors, laziness, incapacity to live, how little I appreciated it, how many times I sinned against my heart and my soul. I think about this, then my heart bleeds. Life is a gift. Life is happiness. Every minute can be eternity of happiness. This is something that we struggle with in our understanding. We struggle with in our being. We struggle with in the chaos of our days, and the loss of punctuation, in our falling down and our getting up, and our falling down and our catching ourselves, and our falling down in the way that we walk through this world. It's one of the powers of the disciplines of the church, of prayer and fasting and worship and all these things that we do, is that they help us punctuate our days, but they also help us to watch the way we walk, to help us watch the way we walk, to help us in the ways that we are, in the ways that we move through this world, Make the very most and then make the very greatest of the eternity of happiness that is in every moment. I know that happiness is a stupid kind of elusive thing in some ways, but listen back to Paul's words. Therefore, be careful how you walk, not as unwise people, but as wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. So then do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Making the most of our time. Now, the problem with that is, and I think it's the problem with our walking out of things in these days, is that in a 21st century mindset as good productive Americans, we're going to maximize our life hacks, and we're going to make sure we maximize our time, and we're going to be efficient in all the things that we do, and we're going to wrap up some kind of Tony Robbins experience to be able to make sure we get the full effectiveness of the day, and that if we're not fully effective in our day, then somehow we've lost we've lost the opportunities of all that the day held. Friends, what is it that the Lord requires of us? We talked about this the other day. Love mercy, do justice, and walk humbly with our God. None of those, friends, none of those are about how productive or how many things you got done or how many widgets you got made or how many cookies you managed to get decorated in the right way or how many times that you but they are about the grand adventure of living in eternity right here and right now. That's the invitation that Paul is inviting the church in Ephesus to, even though they're surrounded by nothing but fangs and teeth, that they are surrounded by nothing but the acrimony of a culture that hates them. He invites them to make the most of their days and loving one another and loving God. Ellen Bass writes this great poem, and I want to leave you with it today because I just love it, and I think it actually speaks to all of what Paul was inviting us to. Not simply the carpe diem moment. It's not simply that, but it is to make the most of our days and to know that in them and in us, though we may be facing evil days, is that the will of God is right there in us and with us and behind us and above us and to the left of us and to the right of us, and encourages and calls us on to keep losing our balance and catching ourselves, to keep losing our balance and catching ourselves, to keep losing our balance and catching ourselves, and simply continue to walk out this grand and great adventure of life in Christ Jesus that we have been given in promise and in glory. Hear the words of this poet, Ellen Bass. The poem is called If You Knew. What if you knew you'd be the last to touch someone? If you were taking tickets, for example, at a theater, tearing them and giving back the ragged stubs, you might take care to touch that palm, to brush your fingertips along the lifeline's crease. When a man pulls his wheeled suitcase too slowly through the airport, and when the car in front of me doesn't signal, and when the clerk at the pharmacy won't say thank you, I don't remember they're going to die. A friend told me she'd been with her aunt, and they just had lunch, and the waiter, a young gay man, had, with plum black eyes, joked as he served us the coffee, and he bent down and kissed her aunt's powdered cheek when they left. And then they walked half a block, and her aunt dropped dead on the sidewalk. How close does the dragon spume have to come? How wide does the crack in heaven have to split? What would people look like if we could see them as they are, soaked in honey, stung and swollen, reckless and pinned against time? Friends, watch how you walk today. Make the most of this day. It is a gift from the one who made you, and it is filled with all manner of eternity and all gloriousness and grace. That's my hope for all of you today. And we will, and it is a joy to be on the journey of 1111 with each one of you. We will pick it up next week. We'll be worshiping at 10 a.m. on Sunday here at 282 Rock Street, Fall River. Come and join us. Or you can join us on Facebook Live. We have had some technical issues on Facebook Live, and there's nothing on our end. There's simply what's going on with Facebook. So we're doing our very best. So, but we will always make sure that the sermon is recorded and is posted online as well. And the Minister of Hospitality is back there now. So with that, we'll let Poco say goodbye and have a great weekend. And we will pick it up with another 11:11 next week on Tuesday. Peace and grace, my friends.